which my boss to pay me more than just pleasant compliments. But if they all sound like fairly improbable ambitions, then how would you fancy laying claim to having access to that most fundamental thing of all, the universal life energy? Reiki is an ancient Oriental art, only introduced to the West in the 70s, which draws on tantric Buddhist principles and quite literally draws on the limitless power of frankly everything. And it's said that a course of treatment could enhance your well-being as well as cure health problems. Well, Warwickshire-based Steve Gooch is Central England's only practicing Reiki Master, and as such, if you're looking for someone who can channel the universe's energy into your tired and sickly body, well, he's your man. He's come to our Coventry studios this afternoon, fully equipped with a glowing life force, I hope, along with Chris Brown, who's a former client of Steve's, who was so taken with Reiki that she's now studying to become a practitioner herself. A very good afternoon to you both.
Hello.
Thanks so much for joining us. Fascinating subject. Steve, it's a bit difficult, I imagine, to sum up the workings of the universe in a sentence, but was my summing up of the essence of Reiki roughly the right idea of exactly what this is about?
Yes, I think so. One thing I would put you correct on, though, is that I am not the only practicing Reiki Master in the Midlands. What I am is the only practicing Reiki Master of my particular lineage, which is the Eastern lineage of Reiki. There are actually Reiki Masters from the Western lineage practicing in the area.
Now, I believe you're originally an art and design teacher, admittedly in Glastonbury, but how can a lad from Rugby get involved in a centuries-old Buddhist art? How did all this come about?
I got out of teaching after 10 years and was looking for a new direction in life. And initially I was looking for possibly a career in alternative therapies. I'd never heard of Reiki at this point, and now I actually read an article about Reiki in a magazine and sort of thought that looks good, I'm interested in this, and I went and did some training with my Reiki Masters in Newcastle, and I've actually really got into it for myself rather than as a practitioner now.
Now, when I talk there about channeling universal energy and that sort of thing, people will think, well, what exactly does that mean? It sounds fantastic, it sounds wonderful, but how practically is it done? So how practically do you practice this?
In a treatment situation, all I do is put my hands on the client and just have the intention that this energy will flow. And the energy will flow through the centre of my body, down my arms, out my palms, and into the other person. They will actually experience this as heat or tingling, a sort of pins and needles sensation some people get. But I must emphasise that actually I'm not doing anything other than just putting my hands on it. It's the person that I'm working on that is actually drawing the energy through me. In a sense, I'm a bit like the pipe work that connects to a tap.
Yeah.
I do nothing. It's the person who turns on the tap that's doing all the work, if you like.
And how does this energy manifest itself? You say there's a tingle of a sort of a pins and needles type of feeling, but do you feel that energy? Can you? As I say, it's difficult to explain how this works, I imagine. But do you physically feel this energy?
I do. Some people more than others. I actually feel it as quite intense heat in the palms of my hands, right, along with a tingling sensation.
And what's the first time you felt that energy, and did it take you rather by surprise, perhaps?
It did take me by surprise. The first time that I actually felt it was when I did my first degree Reiki class with my Reiki Masters up in Newcastle. And it is quite a shock. It's actually quite a special experience at first, because it is a spiritual energy. And straight away, there's an attunement process in Reiki training, which a Reiki Master has to perform on the student, which accesses this energy and creates a channel in the body for this energy to flow. Once that attunement process is complete, the energy flows straight away, and you can feel it immediately.
You talked about the training that you went through and about the first time that you physically felt this particular feeling. I mean, how do you train to become a master of this kind? What sort of process do you go through?
Within the lineage that I've trained in, the Eastern lineage, which is different to the Western lineage, it's called Reiki Jinkei-Do. At first degree Reiki, you study for a weekend with your Reiki Masters. Now, that doesn't sound like a long time for a course of training. But as I said, the essential part of Reiki training is this attunement process. And this is a very ancient ceremony or ritual that is performed by the Reiki Master on the student, which accesses this energy. Now, you have these attunements. There are 4 at Reiki 1. Once you've had those attunements, and there is also background information, the history of Reiki, what it does, where it comes from, etc. But once you've had the attunements, that's it. You can actually do Reiki healing, if you like. There are 3 degrees at Reiki. The second degree, which you take a minimum of 3 months later, there's another attunement process which increases your ability to channel that energy. Now, for most people, that's enough. Reiki 1 is actually enough for most people. There are very few people that actually go on to train as Reiki Masters. I mean, I'm only the 5th, I think the 5th person in this country that's actually trained as a master in the Eastern tradition. And I'm actually at the point now where I'm going to be training students, and I certainly am going to be looking very hard at the type of person that I actually train as a Reiki Master myself in the future.
So it's definitely something you can learn to do, because you get the idea perhaps this sort of thing is a gift that you're given, not something you can learn to do. But is that a false impression of what this is?
It is something that everybody can learn to do. There are a lot of people in the spiritual healing community that have this idea that it's either something that you can do or you can't do, and that is not true. With Reiki, anybody can do it. Anybody can go on a Reiki course, and at the end of that weekend will have the ability to channel this energy.
Now, I've met cynics before, and I'm going to try and be one for a second. I mean, a lot of people listening and thinking, well, this sounds fantastic, but surely a load of baloney. Universal energies and these sort of feelings people are having and treating various illnesses and that sort of thing. What do you say to people who are a little cynical about what you do and don't quite believe it really works?
Okay, there's a very easy answer to that question. They used to say some time ago the same sort of things about acupuncture. Acupuncture has been proven to work. If it works on animals, it's not psychological. The same thing can be said of Reiki. It does work on animals and has been proven over and over again that it does work. You can photograph Reiki energy. You can monitor it with computer technology. You can measure it with computer technology. It is not a question of convincing people anymore. My answer to people that think this is all psychological is that I think they're probably the same sort of people that still believe the earth is flat.
But I suppose it's also the case that an awful lot of treatments have a psychological edge to them as well. Obviously, it's all the physical treatments, but part of it is about things being psychological. I mean, just a very simple example, I know that if I've got a really bad headache, the fact I take something for it, part of it is obviously what it's doing for it, but I know that the fact I've taken it makes me immediately feel better, and that's the same with all sorts of treatment, isn't it?
Sure. Reiki, as I said, is drawn by the recipient. It's not given by me. I don't actually do anything other than put my hands on. I have had people that are skeptical. A very good friend of mine has actually done Reiki training himself, came to me for treatments, not really believing that much was going to happen. And he had quite a profound experience during that. It actually changed his life quite fundamentally. He was very depressed at one point and anxious and stressed, and that disappeared very quickly. And he actually went on a training course himself with the expectation that he was just going to have a good weekend, but wasn't going to gain the ability to do Reiki. And he sat through the whole weekend with a grin on his face, looking at his hands, couldn't believe that this energy was actually coming out of the palms of his hands that he could feel quite intensely.
Stay with us. We'll introduce our second guest who's with us this afternoon, who's Chris Brown, a former client of Steve's, but has been very impressed with this particular method. Chris, good afternoon to you.
Hello.
First of all, what was the problem you went to Steve with?
I had ME. I've still got it.
Yeah. And how was Reiki able to help you out, and what has it actually done for you?
Well, to begin with, I wasn't sure what it would do, but I found that within a short space of time that I was able to walk and concentrate, not for very long periods of time, but I've been going to Steve for about a year, and I just can't express my gratitude to him. It's just been marvellous.
What took you to Steve in the first place? Because it's not the obvious place to go, is it, this sort of thing?
It was suggested by several people that Reiki was the answer to ME. There's been so many answers to ME, I've got to say.
Yes.
And I saw Steve's photo in the local paper, and I just knew I'd got to phone him up. I don't know why, but I just knew, and I phoned him up, and that was this, and he's been very patient with me.
Now, I took the sceptical line a few seconds ago. Be honest, were you a little bit sceptical at any time?
Oh, yes. I mean, I'm the same as anybody else.
Yeah.
I didn't believe it would work because nothing else has worked for me. And because it's an unknown sort of disease or illness or whatever you want to call it. But yes, it has worked for me. Yes, I can't say otherwise. I mean, I'm here today, I'm walking, I'm talking, and I'm able to concentrate long enough to do that.
What do friends' relations make of the fact you've gone to Steve and have taken this particular route to do something about it? Do they believe it's all really true, or are they a bit cynical as well?
To begin with, they sort of thought I was a bit mad. But they were more interested in what he did. And when I just said he just put his hands in various parts of my body, like my head, my chest and my tummy, they just thought, how can that heal? Yeah. I don't know the answers. It does. I just feel so much better. I can probably have a bad day after I've seen him, but I've been told that's the toxics that's coming out of the body. And then I'm fine. But I know when I need a top-up, I still have to go to him so I thought I'd train and sort of do it myself.
Yeah, we'll talk about what you're going through in a second, but just take us through a session that takes place, because we've heard obviously Steve talking about the way he does it, but a session where you've actually had treatment and hands have been laid on your head or your shoulders, whatever. What do you feel physically in the course of a session like that?
It depends. Sometimes it's not very strong, and other times it's very, very strong. There's a tremendous amount of heat. I had a session last night and it was so much heat. It was just so hot. It was incredible.
Now, the first time you felt that heat and the first session when it really, really worked, I mean, it sounds almost scary to me, the idea of feeling an intense heat in the course of this coming through the hands of someone like Steve. I mean, was it a frightening?
No. The one thing you do get is just peace. You feel very, very relaxed through the whole thing. It's not a bit frightening. It sounds it, but it isn't, because it's so gentle. But all the way through, you're so relaxed. You're so at peace with yourself, and I think that's the main thing about it. It gives you sort of the tranquility inside yourself. The pins and needles that Steve talks about, yes, I get a lot of that down my spine and my fingers and hands. That was quite worrying to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, just bringing Steve back into this, I'd imagine that for it to work, I'm guessing this, I'm talking from no great prior knowledge, but I'd imagine you've got to be the kind of person who's open to this sort of thing working for you. Because if you close it out of your mind and say, I don't believe it's going to work, and you sit there and you're not ready for it to work, I imagine that maybe it's more difficult. Is it something about opening yourself out for it to work?
It is to some degree. Somebody that just absolutely refuses point blank to believe that something like this could ever work, it probably isn't going to work for them. But having said that, you do not need to have a belief or faith in Reiki. It's not faith healing. A skeptic can come to Reiki with an open mind, and Reiki will prove to that skeptic for itself that it actually works.
Now, we've heard one very good example there, obviously, from Chris, and I'll talk about the training she's going through in just a second. But also, Steve, I believe, very interestingly, you've been involved in treating all sorts of people, including some work with the rugby community. Tell us a bit about what you've been doing there.
About a year ago, I contacted the local community drugs team just to see, actually, well, there was the local health centre, and I just contacted them to see if they'd take some leaflets for me. And when I told them what it was about, they said, excuse me, that you really need to speak to the local community drugs team, because they're into like alternative therapies and stuff. So they put me in touch with them, and I started doing some work with the drugs team on their clients to help people get rid of their dependency on drugs. And I've had quite a lot of success with that. In fact, there's one girl from that team's actually gone on and done first-degree Reiki herself.
I mean, that's very striking, isn't it? A situation like that, which is difficult in lots of ways to think of solutions to that sort of thing, that the Reiki can help in the situation to, say, put people off drugs, but say do something about taking them through those sort of experiences. Were you surprised that it works so well?
I wasn't surprised that it works. No, the thing with Reiki is that there is no condition, no situation that you cannot use it for. People phone me up and say, can you use Reiki for such and such? And I always say yes, it can be used for every type of problem. So it didn't surprise me that it'd work for that. Reiki always works for the best possible outcome of the person that is having the treatment. And I can't dictate what that outcome will be. Only that person knows. Some people respond better than others. You can have two people that are on drugs and they both receive Reiki treatments. One could be a complete failure with that treatment. The other one could be an outstanding success. And it's entirely dependent on the person that you're actually working on.
in both of you are painting a situation where it seems quite straightforward the way that this works, and you've always had examples with helping people in the way it seems to have been very positive. If it is so simple, why aren't more people doing it? Why is it not being done by everybody?
It's growing. Reiki only arrived in the West in the 1970s via a Japanese American called Mrs. Takata, and she was the head of the Western tradition in Reiki. And for very many years, she didn't actually train any new Reiki masters. She was actually the only person in the whole Western world that could train new Reiki masters. From the 1970s on, she actually trained only 22 new Reiki masters. So it's taken this time for Reiki to actually spread around the world. But it is growing very, very fast. I would be very, very surprised if there's any town in Rugby now that hasn't got at least one Reiki master and several Reiki practitioners. And I liken it in a sense to yoga in the 1970s. It's just exploding. It's getting so big now, and people will hear of Reiki again. Everybody's going to have heard of Reiki or know somebody that's had experience of Reiki very shortly.
We talk about yoga, we talk about acupuncture and Reiki. I mean, we're surrounded now by such a wealth of alternative therapies and methods of healing. A question to both of you there. I mean, is there a risk that people might ignore more conventional, proven medical methods, perhaps because of the rise of things like Reiki and, of course, the success of acupuncture, that sort of thing? Chris, any thoughts on that?
Well, there's no cure for ME yet, and Reiki is the answer that I go for. It's worked wonders. I've tried everything else the doctors say there's nothing they can do. So what can I say? I'm the living proof that it works.
Yeah. And Steve, any views on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would never tell anybody that they should ignore conventional Western medicine. It's the backbone of our health system, and it needs supporting. But I would add that alternative therapies, when they're done properly, are a very, very good supplement to what Western medicine can offer. And something like Reiki, which does not have any negative side effects at all, is a very good backup complement to any other form of treatment. But it is worth anybody who's looking for alternative therapies to check out the credentials of the person that they go to, because most of these therapies are unregulated. So that it is very important to actually check out who you're going to.
I was going to say that because it's not the case that anyone could just say, I've read a couple of books, I can come up and say I'm a master of this and a master of that, because you want to get to people who really have studied, people who really do know what they're talking about, because it's not so much it's dangerous, but it's not as effective as perhaps it should be.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And obviously, Chris, you're going through this right now. Take us through exactly what you're doing and what your hopes are.
I haven't started.
We haven't started yet.
I start in May.
Oh, in May, but
yes,
it's not too long to go.
No.
But you're looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it, yes, very much.
And where are you doing the training? Where are you actually doing it?
Wherever Steve organises it.
Oh, right.
I always train from home with small classes, only 3 or 4 students at a time.
Yeah. And is your hope, Chris, that you'll be following in Steve's footsteps?
No, I don't think I'll go that far. Yeah, I think I'll just stop at the first stage and heal myself, to be quite truthful. I might go. We never know. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
I'm quite hopeful that step one to begin with.
Yeah. Well, listen, both of you, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks so much for unlocking some of the secrets of Reiki, which on the face of it sounds a bit baffling, but I think you've made it sound a lot clearer than a lot of people may have thought at the start. Steve and Chris, thanks so much for joining us on the programme. You're with the Adam Mountford Show. It's BBC Coventry and Warwickshire, taking you through between now and 4. If you've got any views on Reiki, you can always give us a bell. It's the programme lets you have your say. Maybe you've had an experience like Chris had there of Steve or someone else across Coventry and Warwickshire. Give us a bell, 01203 231 231.